The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Wrestling to the Max 205 Live. I feel like we need a little clip of the theme song so that way we can actually make it sound legitimate, Brandon.
I
Make that
agree.
happen?
I need to get the theme at some point and download it onto the computer.
No, Wilford, you cannot be on the podcast. If Princess can't be on the podcast, neither can you. Oh, hi, everybody. Welcome into the Wrestling to the Max 205 Live review.
This show has already gone to the dogs.
What a dot. The 205 Live review for July 17th, 2018. I am your host. My name is Harry Broadhurst. The hostess with the mostest, Miss Liz Puglisi, unfortunately had other obligations and is unable to join us for 205 Live. She should be back next week for SmackDown here on Tuesday. And you guys, as a special bonus, will get her a little bit more than that in the upcoming weeks. I'll tell you guys more about that at the end of the show tonight. But, yeah, so what do you say we go ahead and get into this, Brandon?
Let's do it.
All right, yeah, he's Brandon Biskobing, by the way.
Yeah, it failed to introduce me. I need no introduction.
The man who needs no introduction, therefore doesn't get one, Brandon Biskobing.
Precisely.
All right, let's get into this week's episode of 205 Live. We start with a recap of last week's show, once again narrated by Drake Maverick. And I got to say, I actually think that these are some of my favorite parts of 205 Live here, because Maverick does such an excellent job of getting you up to date on the current storylines while making everything seem important, which as the general manager, it's his job to do.
Yeah, Maverick and Regal both are the best GMs in WWE right now, because while, yes, they have control over the shows and everything, for the most part they're just there pretty much just to make matches and to give their insight on what happened last week and then what's happening on that night. They don't really exert control much.
See, I think Paige is the same way, though, because we don't really see Paige get involved unless she absolutely has to, such as she is in the women's division on SmackDown.
True.
I think that with Paige being around here, it's actually gotten a lot better on SmackDown about it than when it was Shane McMahon in charge of the ship.
Yeah, we haven't really seen Shane at all. The McMahons have definitely taken a back seat in terms of the control of the shows lately.
Well, Steph's still all over Monday Night Raw.
But she's through proxy.
Not physically, but she's there in spirit,
yes.
Which is enough. Anyway, our opening contest, scheduled for one fall, starts with a promo, actually, as TJP talks on his way down to the ring, running down Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And if you've ever been there, you realize just how accurate that statement is.
Yes.
Definition, do-nothing town.
It's where the office is film, or where the office is set.
That was in Scranton, actually.
Okay, close enough. I think of them as one and the same because that's how their respective teams are.
Isn't that a Yankees affiliate?
Yes, now it is. It used to be Phillies, but now it's Yankees.
Of course it's Yankees. Anyway, TJP runs down the city, runs down his opponent for the evening, Noam Dar. We get a rematch from last week where Dar won in 30 seconds. This one goes approximately 10 minutes. TJP picking up the win after working over the previously injured knee of Noam Dar and then applying his knee bar variation with the crucifix hookup to get the tap-out win in about 10 minutes here. Obviously, this sets up a third and decisive match between these two. The problem is, though, that this one right here didn't exactly set the world on fire.
Oh, no. But, I mean, like you just said, I think this was kind of one of those matches where it was just to give TJP his win back, so you set up a, best 2 out of 3 match for them.
or at least a deciding third contest between the two of them here. And I'd imagine that the winner of that deciding third contest will find himself back in the thick of things for the Cruiserweight Championship. We'll find out more about the Cruiserweight title a little bit later on in the show, but we're not there yet. Mm-hmm. Speaking of the Cruiserweight Champion, though, a Cedric Alexander video package is up next as we highlight all the things that he's done as champion. And then there's a hype package immediately thereafter for Mustafa Ali. All right, I'm going to go ahead and skip to the end of the show here because this seems kind of obvious to me. So you got a Cedric video package and then a Mustafa video package right back to back to each other. And then a little bit later on in the show, they announced that the 4 participants on next week's episode of 205 Live will be Buddy Murphy, Hideo Itami, Mustafa Ali, and Drew Gulak in a number 1 contenders match here. Given the fact that not Buddy Murphy, TJP, excuse me. But given the fact that they just had a Tommy come up short against Cedric last week, and they aired the Mustafa Ali video package right after the Cedric Alexander package here, do you think they're setting the scene for Mustafa to become the number 1 contender again in a rematch from WrestleMania weekend?
Probably, but I'm not exactly the biggest fan of it because I feel like why are you rehashing what you did at the biggest pay-per-view of your schedule at the second biggest? Granted, we're probably going to get another one of those, a much bigger variety of those on Raw, so I shouldn't really be one to talk about this, but I would prefer to see Gulak actually get a chance.
Speaking of Mr. Gulak, our second contest on this show scheduled for one fall is Drew Gulak versus Jobbersaurus. And sweet niblets, was he a Jobbersaurus. Apparently somebody finally informed Gulak that Masa Saito passed away late last week, because he dropped that guy straight on his head with a Saito suplex. Stan Hansen lariat, Masa Saito suplex, Gulak, tap it like Mr. Bojangles on speed, 28 seconds. To borrow a line from one of my favorite Rachel Simpsons characters, thank you, come again. Any thoughts on the ass kickery?
Nothing really in terms of the match. You know, it was your prototypical squash. He did a lot of squishing. But in terms of where Gulak is right now, I'm hoping, like I said, I hope that he wins that Fatal 4-Way to become the number 1 contender.
Gulak cuts a promo after the match talking about the fact that 205 Live has given us unworthy champion after unworthy champion. The irony of that is one of those unworthy champions is standing right next to him as his sidekick and Brian Kendrick. I thought that might raise some questions.
That is kind of, forget about him. Then again, I think a lot of us have forgotten that Kendrick was a Cruiserweight champion for a little bit.
Well, a lot of you, not I. Anyway. Kendrick, or not Kendrick, excuse me. No, you got me thinking of Kendrick. Mm-hmm. Gulak then states that the jobber who is now out on the floor getting his neck checked by the doctor, basically, you got to check your neck after being in the ring with Drew Gulak, says that he has a lot in common with Cedric Alexander. Not physically or anything such as that, but he's further proof that if you step to Gulak, you will tap out.
I made a reference to Tori there when he said that. I was like, stealing a line from a former Cruiserweight Classic competitor there.
Wasn't that a Zack Sabre Jr. line before?
Yes, it was. That's why I said that.
I thought so. Well, I mean, I'm sure Gulak and Sabre's paths have crossed before.
Oh, yes.
Highlights of Buddy Murphy going ape on the Lucha House Party last week. Tony Nese in a backstage promo then announces that next week on the show we'll get Tony Nese versus Kalisto Part 2 because everybody so cared about Part 1 last week. Okay, let me state for the record that I don't dislike Kalisto. I don't dislike Tony Nese. But I found their match against each other last week to be very dull.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say. It just seems like the Lucha House Party is just the rotating group of guys that they just toss out there haphazardly with.
I believe the word you're looking for there, Brandon, is Job Squad.
Yeah, pretty much.
Our main event, scheduled for one fall, is Akira Tozawa and Lio Rush. And yet again, much the same way that I found myself saying last week here, holy disappointments, Batman. But at the same time, I think that this one was more of a case of they didn't really have the time to get anything going. The match only goes about 9 minutes when Lio Rush picks up the win with Rush Hour.
Didn't 205 end kind of early last night?
Well, I watched it on demand today because I was watching the All-Star game yesterday.
Oh, yes. But what was the time stamp on it?
Today being Wednesday, July 18th, for those of you playing along at home. I honestly don't know without looking it up. If you give me a few seconds, I can pull up the network feed of it and give you that answer, but you're going to have to stall for time by talking about this match.
Okay, yeah, I mean, like Harry said, it was a decent match, but, with both of these guys and how athletic they are and how good technically they are, you definitely would have thought that there would have been a much better performance by both of them. Do I think this is the end? Probably not, but I mean they didn't really leave it with too much, leeway here. So I mean, we'll see where they go from there. But yeah, definitely not the best match in the world, especially for a 205 main event, like we talked about last week, where, you had, you're so used to having those great technical matches, especially in main event spots. But, yeah.
45-37.
Okay, yeah, so it was a little short.
A little shorter than usual, yes. And that includes the promos that we got from Gulak and Perkins, as well as the backstage segment that closed off the show too. So a little bit less in ring than we're traditionally used to here.
Yeah. Right, so I don't know what's going on with 205 lately.
Well, in regards to the whole Lio Rush Akira Tozawa thing, I think that they're going to be setting this up for something more down the road, and they didn't want to give too much away in this first encounter.
But I just don't see where they can go with it because it was pretty definitive victory.
Yeah, but at the same time, if somebody like Leo were to pick up the Cruiserweight title, then Akira could be somebody that could challenge him, and you can harken back to their history.
That's true. That's true.
Pushing with each other. I don't think that it's going to be long until Lio Rush takes the Cruiserweight title off of Cedric Alexander.
No, you're probably right there.
Because I would make the argument that outside of Alexander, Lio Rush is probably the most charismatic guy in the division right now. You may be able to make that argument for Mustafa Ali, but on the heel side of things, I don't think there's anybody even close to Lio Rush, with the possible exception of Drew Gulak.
Yeah, I would say Gulak is the only one, and
Gulak's charisma comes from more of a sinisterishness about it, the way that he conducts himself inside of the ring,
and he does it more. He's better. He was better in terms of charisma when they had more promo time, and he was more basic WWE format, whereas he doesn't have that charisma in the ring quite as much.
Whereas Leo has that kind of arrogance about him that you just want to see somebody punch that little bastard square in the face.
Mm-hmm.
I think that 205 Live has been missing a strong heel champion since the days of Neville being the champion of the brand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can say the man whose name we dare not mention on 205 anymore, Enzo Amore, all you want to. But Amore was all sizzle, no steak.
Yeah.
The last definitive heel champion that had both the ability to crap talk you as well as to whoop that ass inside of the ring was Neville.
Yes.
And I think that Lio Rush is somebody that can be up there on a scale such as a Neville, such as... I would make the argument that it's got to be Neville, because I don't think I don't think that Kendrick can deliver the goods in the ring at this state in his career as good as Lio Rush can.
No.
And I would make the argument that Kendrick's best promo days are behind him as well.
Yeah. The one person that I would have liked to have seen get a run that could have done something with it as a heel, and honestly, he hasn't had a championship run at all, which I think is a little disappointing, is Gallagher.
You know who I think would have been the guy to carry the division as a heel?
Who?
The belt collector, A-Double.
Yeah, I was honestly surprised that they didn't ever give him a title run, because he feuded with Neville for half a year.
And not to mention, look at what happened as soon as he left 205 Live and showed up in Impact and started being such a glorious little a-hole over there.
Well, that was the problem, though, is that he was feuding with Neville the whole time, and thus he was kind of pigeonholed into a babyface role.
Well, remember when he came back to Impact, he was a face as well, because he came back feuding with Eli Drake, and then he slowly transitioned into being a heel. You could have done the same thing with the original division.
True. Very true.
We get the aforementioned number one contenders match announced in a backstage segment between Drake Maverick and Cedric Alexander to close the show, as it will be TJP, TJP, Hideo Itami, Mustafa Ali, and why am I drawing a blank on the fourth person right now? Drew Gulak.
Derp.
Yeah, I'm special. I don't have the review up in front of me right now.
He's the master of the PowerPoint presentation.
Gulak, Itami, TJP, and Mustafa Ali in a fatal four-way next week on 205 Live here. That match should be good, personality-driven, I would make the argument here. The question for me is, make your pick right now, Brandon. Do you have Ali or do you have Gulak?
What?
Keep in mind that this match probably happens on the SummerSlam pre-show.
Yes. Considering that, and considering WWE's propensity for repeats nowadays, I want to see Gulak win, but I have a feeling, especially with what you're talking about, where they had the Ali promo directly after Alexander, I think they're going to have Ali win it again.
I made the prediction back at WrestleMania that Mustafa Ali would win and Cedric Alexander would turn on him after the match. I think that you could see that happen at SummerSlam now. I think Ali wins the number one contendership and takes the title off of Alexander, and we see Alexander whoop Mustafa Ali's ass afterwards.
Or the reverse happens. I don't think these two come out of it without
still
a turn.
Friends.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible. If Alexander retains, then Ali turns on Alexander.
Yeah.
I could see that as well, but I feel like there's definitely some. Some traction in getting the belt onto somebody other than Alexander right now, just because I think that Cedric's a guy who's very good with the chase, but the title matches have become, I don't know, kind of repetitive. Like, I never really took Hideo Itami as a threat to Alexander, whereas I would have taken Hideo Itami as a threat to Mustafa Ali, because Mustafa Ali and Hideo had an excellent match on 205 Live that Hideo won already.
Yeah, I think part of that, though, is how Itami has been booked, where he doesn't, even with the push that he got, people still haven't really taken him seriously because of his past.
And that officially wraps us up for this week's episode of 205 Live, Brandon. Scale of 1 to 10, where do you fall?
I'll give it a 6.5. The opening match wasn't bad. It sets up, their third match. Getting Gulak some more momentum, that sets up for the fatal four-way next week. And then the main event, while it wasn't bad, it wasn't, top-notch like we're used to in 205, and especially with those two. And how good they could be, you expect more out of them.
I'm even lower than you are. I'm at a 5.5. Our opening contest I thought was dull.
Mm-hmm.
I like TJP's character, but he's not especially interesting in the ring. Noam Dar is interesting in short bursts. In longer matches, he tends to lose my interest. Drew Gulak whooping on Ham and Egger was hilarious. That was fantastic. That's actually what Larry calls him in his review. His name is Hammond Edgar, which is a wonderful tribute to Bobby the Brain Heenan.
That's funny.
And that establishes Gulak as a badass to be taken seriously going forward. Hopefully, Gulak comes out of the four-way with the number one contendership. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if it is Mustafa Ali, considering the fact that it'll probably end up happening at SummerSlam.
Mm-hmm.
And then our main event, well, like you said, wasn't a bad match, was a significant step down from what I think they're capable of.
Oh, definitely.
It almost seemed like they were running in second gear for the entirety of this contest.
Well, while 205 Live should not fall under this category, I don't know if it's the whole summer thing. Although SummerSlam's supposed to be their second biggest show of the year, so this doesn't make any sense. But I mentioned it on Raw yesterday. It seems like WWE creatively right now is in neutral because they're in that lame duck period when it comes to their TV contracts, where the contracts are done, yet the new contracts haven't started yet, so it just seems like they don't care.
Given the fact that 205 Live is network specific, I don't know that I agree with that.
Oh, no, I'm not. That's why I prefaced it with saying this may not necessarily adhere to 205 Live, but it may just be overall WWE is just in this, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, no, not so much rut, where they're just in neutral. They're just riding it out right now.
So I'm assuming that's your one word for this show, neutral?
Yeah.
I was going to go with something similar. I was going to say stagnant.
Yeah.
Although if I had to pick one specifically for the main event, I'd almost say letdown.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely.
Maybe it's my fault for having my expectations so high for that match, but knowing what Akira Tozawa and Lio Rush are capable of, my expectations were significantly higher than what we got.
Exactly. That's the thing, is that these two, that they can put on a great match. The one thing that I will say, to give them the benefit of the doubt, have they ever gone up against each other at all in the past in the Indies or anything like that?
That is a very good question because of the fact that there's such an age gap there from Tozawa to Leo, with Leo only being 23 and Tozawa being in his early 30s.
Yeah, so maybe they haven't ever actually been in the ring together, so they don't have that chemistry that a lot of these guys have because they've been in the Indies together and whatnot.
So would you like me to put this week's episode of 205 Live into a nutshell for you, Brandon?
Sure.
Both Raw and SmackDown each had two matches better than anything on 205 Live this week. When was the last time you could say that?
That's shocking that we've been talking about 205 Live for the past, 2 or 3 months, always having the best match in terms of technical performance. And now for 2 weeks straight, you could say, maybe not.
Both of the triple threats on Raw,
mm-hmm.
AJ Styles and Cien Almas and Shinsuke Nakamura and Jeff Hardy from SmackDown were both better than anything on 205 Live tonight.
Yeah.
Make sure you listen to this week's episode of the Tuesday Night Live SmackDown review, so that way you guys can get all the plugs and stuff. He's Brandon Biskobing. I'm Harry Broadhurst. This has been the Wrestling to the Max 205 Live review here on the W2M Network, available online at W2Mnet.com. In addition to being findable wherever you listen to podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher, Podbean, CastBox, and coming soon, allegedly, to Spotify. I just figured I'd take care of it, handle it real quick. He's Brandon. I'm Harry. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys next week here on 205 Live.